Hello and welcome. I am Adam Elwan and I will be your moderator. Today, we move to the fifth webinar in our series for REACH 2018 registrants, preparing your registration as a IUCLID dossier. Before we start, here's a short recap of what we have already covered in our previous webinars. In the first, we described how to identify which substances in your portfolio need to be registered before the 2018 deadline and how you can move forward. The second and third webinars explained how you can find your co-registrants, start preparing to work together, and how to get organized with them through the Substance Information Exchange Forums, or SIFs. The fourth webinar focused on how you can collect and generate the information you need for the tonnage you want to register. These webinars have been recorded, and you can find them all on our website and our YouTube channel. Now, in today's webinar, we will guide you through the different steps that are needed to successfully create a complete registration dossier in IUCLID. You will also learn how, under certain conditions, a registration dossier for a member of a joint submission can be created directly in our submission tool, REACH IT. So here's the program for today. We'll start with a short introduction to the IUCLID application, followed by 2 practical examples for reporting your data in IUCLID and creating your dossier. We will then conclude with a brief overview of how to create your dossier in REACH IT before moving on to our Q&A session. In the Q&A session, our expert panel will cover a selection of questions. You can submit yours through the Q&A panel at any time during the webinar. During the webinar, our panelists will also answer through the Q&A panel. We expect several questions and may not be able to answer all of them during the webinar. If yours is not answered, you can submit it to your National Help Desk or to the ECHA Help Desk. Remember also that you can maximize the small video window visible in the top right corner of the screen by double-clicking on it with your mouse. Pressing the Escape key on your keyboard will return you to the normal view. In case you experience any difficulties with the webinar tool, you can contact our technical support team also through the Q&A panel. This webinar will be recorded and published on our website. All the material we present today is available on the 2018 registration web pages, which you can find from our homepage. Okay, without further ado, let's move to a short introduction to IUCLID by my colleagues Catherine and François.
Welcome everybody to this webinar. My name is Catherine Cornu and I work on registration matters in ECHA. In this short presentation, I will set out phase 5 of our plan for successful registration by 2018. I will explain the basics here, but step-by-step instructions and answers to frequently asked questions are available on our website. So there are 5 key activities in this phase of your preparations for registration. You need to get the IUCLID application, get started with it, and create your substance data set. Fill in the data on your substance, and then create your registration dossier and check it. I will briefly explain what you need to do for these 5 activities, and afterwards, colleagues will explain and demonstrate further how to do it in practice. IUCLID is an IT application to manage information on chemicals. The first thing to do in this phase is to get IUCLID and install it on your computer. You can download IUCLID for free from the ECHA website, and installation is very easy. We are at version 6 of IUCLID now, so when exchanging files with registrants who registered for the previous deadlines, keep in mind that registrations now need to be prepared in IUCLID 6. If you need to prepare a simple member dossier, you now have the option of preparing and submitting it in one go in REACH IT. My colleague Sandrine will explain further how you can do that, but otherwise using IUCLID is the only way to prepare a registration dossier. Once you have installed IUCLID, you can start using it and create a substance dataset for your substance, where you specify which substance the registration dossier will be for. You can ask for the substance dataset from the lead registrant, but you can also create your own. Once you have created your substance dataset, you can fill in the data you have gathered throughout the different phases. each co-registrant needs to submit their own registration as part of the joint registration, and your registration dossier needs to contain, firstly, the identity of your substance, as we discussed in the Phase 1 webinar, including your own concentration ranges and impurities, and also the tonnages you have manufactured or imported during at least the last 3 years, and the uses and conditions of use in your supply chain throughout the life cycle of the substance. As a lead of a joint registration, your IUCLID dossier will need to contain the substance identity profile. This is the generic description of the substance agreed by the SIEF during the substance sameness discussion. It also needs to contain all the hazard data gathered by the SIEF, meaning the physicochemical properties, toxicological and ecotoxicological data, and the classification and labeling of the substance derived from the gathered hazard data. Then, depending on the situation, you may need to enter any of the following in your IUCLID dossier: the guidance on safe use, and if you're registering in the 10 to 100 tons per year band, the assessment of the PBT properties of the substance, and the chemical safety report, unless the lead will submit it jointly on behalf of the whole SIEF. Or, as a member, you can under certain conditions submit data in your own registration dossier rather than in the dossier of the lead registrant, for which you also need to provide a justification. Remember that some parts of the information in your IUCLID dossier will be published on the ECHA website, such as the name of your company and the uses of the substance. You can find the full list of possible claims on our website. If you consider some of this information to be confidential business information, you can indicate in IUCLID that you do not want this information to be published. You will then need to enter a comprehensive justification in IUCLID and pay the fee in addition to the registration fee. After registration, we will assess all your confidentiality claims. When you have filled in all your data, you can create a dossier. You will at that time need to specify if you are creating a lead dossier or a member dossier, which tonnage band you are creating a dossier for, and if it concerns a dossier for full registration or registration for an intermediate under strictly controlled conditions. The last step before you are ready to submit your dossier is to check the dossier you have created. IUCLID has 2 specific functionalities to help with that. The most important functionality is the validation assistant. It helps you to check if your dossier can be accepted as complete when you submit it. You can also use the validation assistant on your dataset before you create the dossier. Then there is the dissemination preview, which shows which information from your dossier will be made available to the public on ECHA's website. So use these functionalities and determine if you need to make changes to your dataset and create a new dossier. So we've now talked about all 5 key activities of Phase 5 of your plan for registering by 2018, and I will conclude with a few messages for you to take away from this. If you have not done so already, get your IUCLID application today. It's for free, and then you have it available to try it at any time. Foresee sufficient time to fill in the data, especially for lead registrant dossiers, and ensure that your dossier is fit for submission. Your IUCLID dossier needs to show that you know your substance and the hazards associated with your substance. You know how your substance is used in your supply chain, and that you have put in place and communicated the risk management measures needed to use your substance safely. It is important that you enter all this information correctly in IUCLID and not risk that your dossier is found incomplete or incompliant. And remember that support material is available from our national help desk and from industry associations, and from the ECHA website by clicking on the Reach 2018 banner. We also have a specific IUCLID help desk, which can be contacted via the ECHA website if you have any questions about IUCLID. This concludes my presentation for today. Thank you for your attention.
Hello, my name is François Legoff and I'm the product manager for IUCLID. Catherine already presented the main types of information that should be inserted in a IUCLID registration dossier and also highlighted the main steps in preparing your dossier. Before we start looking into these steps in more details, let's see the suite of IT tools that support the preparation of a registration dossier. ECHA provides several IT tools to help registrants prepare a registration dossier in IUCLID. Data generation is supported by CASAR for the chemical safety assessment and by the QSAR toolbox for the calculation of substance properties. Data submission to ECHA is done via an IT tool, REACH-IT. Today, we focus on the tools used for data management, IUCLID and REACH-IT for some registration types. Let's see first how to access IUCLID. All the information is available on the IUCLID 6 website. From there, you must create a user account in order to download the most appropriate version for your needs. Creating an account gives you the possibility to subscribe to news notifications. In most cases, you will want to download and install the desktop version of IUCLID. This version is for single users accessing IUCLID on their own computer. The installer will guide you through the installation process in a few clicks, whether you are installing IUCLID for the first time or whether you want to upgrade your existing IUCLID 5.6 software. At the end of the installation, IUCLID 6 will start, and this is the home page of the application. Let's have a look at the most important functions available from here. The starting point for managing data on chemicals using IUCLID 6 is the substance dataset. From this part of the application, you can create new datasets or update existing ones. Datasets are the place where data on chemicals is entered. You will see a bit later in this presentation and in a demo afterwards the content of such a substance dataset. A bit further on the right of the screen, you will find the place where the data to be submitted to ECHA is stored. Substance datasets are converted into dossiers before submission to ECHA. They are a read-only copy of a given dataset, like a snapshot of the information on your substance taken at a certain point in time, just before the submission of the information to ECHA. Multiple dossiers can be created from the same dataset, and new dossiers will be created each time a registration dossier needs to be updated, for example. Even further right, you will see some interesting functions for exchanging data with the import and export tools. This is done using the IUCLID 6 format for exchanging files with an i6z extension. It is sometimes useful to exchange IUCLID data. For example, between a laboratory filling in the information on substance properties and the registrant who is maintaining the main substance dataset and will add the use and tonnage information, for example. Another example of data exchange would be a lead registrant sharing the substance dataset with other members of the joint submission so they can have a starting point for adding their own information, such as the substance composition and a description of their uses. We have now seen how to get IUCLID 6 and an overview of the main functions. Before we continue with an overview of the data managed in IUCLID, let's go through some key elements of IUCLID terminology. First of all, when using IUCLID, you will see the term legal entity. A legal entity is a document containing the details of the organization using IUCLID. Under each, this will represent a natural or legal person who has to register a substance. The information given in IUCLID is for your own record keeping, as ECHA will use the information given in ECHA accounts or in REACH-IT instead. By default, this legal entity is not included in your dossier. Then, in Euclid, you will find so-called reference substances. This is again a piece of information containing the key identifiers of your substance or its constituents, such as the UPAC name, CAS, and EC numbers. In a Euclid substance dataset, you will collect information on different endpoints, which represent properties of the chemicals to be registered and for which information is required to be communicated to ECHA. Finally, you will find that each document in Euclid is tagged with a UUID, a unique identifier that allows to unequivocally identify a precise piece of information. Let's now have a closer look at the type of data managed in Euclid. A substance dataset is organized like a book with a table of contents. Using this table of content, or TOC, as indicated in the user interface, you will be able to browse through the different types of information required for a rich registration. The first section of the Euclid table of content is for the substance identification. A substance has to be identified with a reference substance containing the substance key identifiers, but full composition should also be provided. This information is supported by a set of analytical information. If we have a closer look at how a substance is identified in Euclid, we will see that this information is composed of several elements. The EC inventory, included in Euclid, is used to retrieve the known identifiers for the substance, such as the name, CAS, and EC numbers. The relevant EC number entry is selected by the user and used together with other information, such as the molecular weight and formula, in a reference substance. The Euclid 6 website offers a set of reference substances for download, but you can also create your own directly in Euclid. These reference substances are then used to define the overall substance and each constituent, impurity, and additives if relevant. Concentration ranges have to be given for each element of the substance composition. Moving down in the table of content, you will find the classification labeling information according to the CLP regulation and the outcome of the assessment whether the substance meets the criteria for persistence, biodegradability, and toxicity. Then, section 3 is dedicated to the tonnage, use, and exposure information. The registrants need to identify the uses of the substance registered following the use descriptor system described in the guidance document. Let's have a closer look as well as the use information in Euclid. First, the uses are organized by life cycle stages, such as the manufacture, the use by professional and consumers, and finally, the use of the substance during the service life. For example, when it is used in articles. Then, each use is defined using descriptors, such as the technical function of the substance, the process or product categories. If needed, the conditions of use are also reported. The next sections, from 4 to 7, will contain the summaries of studies performed on the chemical in order to measure its properties. The data is organized there according to relevant endpoints, such as water solubility, hydrolysis, or genotoxicity. The study summaries are reported in endpoint study record. Inside these records, the data is always organized in the same way, following the standards developed at the OECD level. The main parts of the study record are the administrative data, with an indication of the type of information or the study reliability, the source of data, a description of the methods used, and the results obtained. Several records can be created to report information on the same substance property. If that's the case, the assessment of all the data available for this property can be summarized in an endpoint summary. Finally, you will find the guidance for safe use of the substance and, if required, the chemical safety report included as an attachment to section 13. Before I conclude and we come back to the main steps of the preparation of a registration dossier, I would like to invite you to have a look at the tips we shared in the social media and on our ECHA website. Adam will come back to this list of tips later during this webinar, but there is particularly one thing that is important to know and that will allow you to get access to specific support within IUCLID itself. If you press the key F1 on your keyboard while using IUCLID, you will have access to the integrated help system. The help in IUCLID contains different levels of information, from a description of the IUCLID functionalities to specific field instructions. The manual explaining step by step how to create a registration dossier is also accessible from there. With this presentation, you have seen how to get IUCLID 6 and its main functions and types of information. Now, let's look in more detail to a substance dataset creation and how to fill in the required information through a demo presented by my colleague Terry. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you, Catherine and François. Now that we have set the scene, let's move on to our practical examples, how you can report data in Euclid, and how to create your dossier in Euclid format by Terhi and Margot.
My name is Terhi Rantala, and I will be demonstrating how to create and fill in your substance dataset in Euclid. The first part of this demo will cover Euclid sections 1 and 3. The information in these key sections will answer some of the basic questions concerning your registration. Who is the registrant? What is registered? When and how much substance was produced or imported? And how is the substance used? Sections 1 and 3 concern both the lead registrant and the other members of the joint submission. In the last part of my demo, I will show you an example of an endpoint study record, the place in Euclid where the studies performed on the substance are summarized. So let's start with the creation of a Euclid dataset. In order to create a new empty dataset, right-click on the substance icon and select New. You can now see section 1.1 of a newly created dataset. This section contains information about your company and your substance. The mandatory information of this section, which is needed before you can save your dataset, is marked with a red asterisk. First, give a descriptive name to your dataset in the first field, Substance Name. Then comes the legal entity. Euclid has already linked a default legal entity to your dataset. A legal entity is an element in Euclid that contains information about your company. This is for Euclid data management purposes only, since ECHA will only consider the company information in your ReachIT account. Click on the Save icon. On your left-hand side, in the navigation panel, you see the list of all substance datasets that you may have created earlier. Once you save your new dataset, it will appear in the list of all datasets. For the purpose of this demonstration, we have created and filled in a dataset in advance. I will use it to show you the key sections of Euclid and some basic functionalities. So now I will open the previously filled in dataset by double-clicking its name in the list. We already had a look at the substance name field. Let's continue to add our company information. Under Role in the supply chain, tick the box or boxes that apply to your company, either manufacturer, importer, or both. Note that you cannot select the only representative role together with the manufacturer or importer roles. The only representative status requires a separate registration dossier. Let's move on to identifying your substance, still in section 1.1. In the field called Reference Substance, click the chain icon to find a list of your reference substances. Enter your search criteria to retrieve an already existing reference substance, for example an EC number. The EC number is searchable in the field Inventory Number. Click Search. Select your substance and click Assign. If you have not yet created a reference substance, you can create one by clicking the button New. Fill in the substance details and click Save. As explained by François, once you have created a reference substance, you don't have to create one again for the same substance. You can link the same reference substance to other places in the same dataset, and you can also link it to other datasets. You can manage all the reference substances centrally in the reference substance inventory, which you can find in the Euclid homepage under Inventories. When you are ready with your reference substance, make a selection in the pick list concerning your substance type. For registrations, the available options are monoconstituent, multi-constituent, or UBCB. Save the information by clicking the Save icon. We have now filled in the key information in section 1.1, so let's move on to provide more detailed information on the substance composition in section 1.2. In order to navigate to another sections in Euclid, open the tab called TOC in the navigation panel. TOC stands for Table of Contents. In the Table of Contents, the default view is a Reach Complete Table of Contents, and as the name suggests, it has all the relevant sections for Reach. You can change the view to a particular submission type, so Euclid will only display the specific sections relevant for your case. Click the black arrow to open a list. In the list, you can find, for example, a view for the Joint Submission member. When you select this and click OK, you can see that Euclid has now hidden or grayed out sections that are not relevant for a Joint Submission member. Now when you open the section tree, you see it has the names of the sections. You can open the sections by clicking the plus sign and close them by clicking the minus sign. Under each section, if you wish to include information, you need to create a record where you can fill in the data. In some cases, as we will see, you need more than one record. We have already created some records here in my example dataset, but I will briefly show you how to create a new record. Simply right-click on top of the section name and select New Record. I open one of the complete composition records for us to have a look by clicking the record name. By default, each composition record created under section 1.2 is of type legal entity composition of the substance. This means that the substance composition presented in this record is specific to your company. Each registrant, the lead and the members, will have to provide a substance composition specific to their own business. In addition to this, the lead registrant is required to create a second record under section 1.2, which will have the type boundary composition of the substance. Boundary composition is the so-called substance identification profile that covers all the legal entity compositions in the joint submission. You can give more detailed information on the composition in the field Description of Composition. We suggest to use the free text template which you can open by clicking the symbol with letter A and an arrow. Once opened, you can select between different templates. For example, to provide a composition description for a UVCB substance. You need to provide further information on your UVCB substance in this field to identify the composition. Include, for example, the identity of the starting materials and a description of the production process. You can also provide supporting attachments under the attached description by clicking Add and the plus sign. Provide the degree of purity of the composition together with the unit. In the following fields, include the constituents, impurities, and additives of the composition with the linked reference substance and indicate the concentrations. The next section to have a look at is 1.4. This is the place for the analytical information on your substance, such as spectra or chromatograms. Use the table Analytical Determination to provide the analytical information. When you add information in this section, select from the pick list whether the information is about identification or quantification or both, and attach the results and methods description. Let's move on to section 3 of Euclid and start with the estimated quantities, section 3.2. Use this section to report information on the volumes of your substance per year. To enter your data, you must create new record per calendar year that you report. Next, I will show you section 3.5. In this section, you can report use and exposure information concerning your substance. This section is structured according to the substance life cycle, each subsection representing one life cycle stage. For example, you can report the manufacture of the substance in its own record in section 351. You can find detailed information on how to fill in the uses as well as all the other sections in Euclid in the submission manual. Press F1 on your keyboard to open the help system of Euclid 6 and see specific instructions on how to fill in the information. My last topic before we move on to the next demonstration is an endpoint study record. Since endpoint study records are relevant for lead dossiers, let's change the view from member registrant to the view of a lead registrant. I select the view Reach Registration 10 to 100 tons. As an example, we have chosen the endpoint Biodegradation in Water, Euclid section 521. I will open the endpoint study record for us to have a look. The administrative data part includes information about the study itself, for example, whether the study is experimental, whether it is a key study or a supporting study, etc. The next main part is the data source. Here you can fill in all the relevant literature references and what kind of access you have to the data. Under Materials and Methods, you will include information about the test materials and the test methods that were followed. In the Results and Discussions part, there are tables and fields for you to include the outcome of the study. Each endpoint study record has a unique results section for each particular study. Under Overall Remarks, Attachments, you can provide an interpretation or analysis of the obtained results. For example, you can list factors that you may have influenced the quality of the results. Finally, provide the interpretation of the results and the main conclusions from the study under Applicant's Summary and Conclusions. We have now come to the end of this demonstration on how to fill in some of the key sections in a substance dataset in Euclid. The second demonstration, that will start now, will show you the next steps that you need to follow once you have completed all the sections of your dataset and are ready to submit the data to ECHA. I thank you all for listening and hand over to Margot.
My name is Margot Mäki and I work in the dossier submission and PIC unit. In the next presentation, you will see how to run the validation assistant on a substance dataset, how to correct the reported failures, how to create a dossier, how to validate the final dossier, and how to export the dossier. You have now included all the information into your substance dataset. The next step is to validate the data by running the validation assistant. The validation assistant has been developed to perform technical checks on your substance dataset and on your dossier. Correcting all the failures that are reported by the validation assistant will minimize the risk for failing the completeness check performed by the agency. Let's get started. Select your substance dataset from the list of all the available substances. For that, click on the substance icon and select the substance you wish to validate. Right-click on it and select Validate. When applied to a substance dataset, the validation assistant needs to know under which context to run the checks. Therefore, you will be asked to fill in a range of information related to your submission type before the validation assistant report can be generated. The validation assistant can be run on a substance dataset to detect and correct technical issues even before the dossier is created. You will be asked to fill in the exact same information also during the dossier creation. Select the submission type from the drop-down list. In my example, I am working on a lead dossier with the joint submission tonnage band of 10 to 100 tons per year. If you are a member registrant, make a selection between the two available member submission types. Click Next. At the next step, select the tick box for joint submission. If the lead provides the chemical safety report and the guidance on safe use on behalf of the members, then the respective tick boxes need to be selected. In my example, the lead provides this information for the members. You are asked to select the relevant tonnage bands for your own submission. In my example, the lead's own tonnage is equal to the joint submission tonnage. In other words, 10 to 100 tons per year. However, this is not necessarily always the case. Select the phase-in status of your substance. In addition, you may wish to select certain dossier-specific information, such as the confidentiality claims on the registration number or on the registered tonnage band. Click Next, and the Validation Assistant report will open. In my example, you can see one completeness check failure in IUCLID section 1.4 Analytical Information. The failure message explains the reason for the error. You can either manually navigate to the location of the error via the IUCLID section 3, or you can be automatically directed to the failing record. For that, right-click on the failure message and select Go to the reference document. You are automatically taken to the failing record. Should the Validation Assistant report be minimized, you can always retrieve it by clicking on the Validation Assistant icon in the bottom right corner. You cannot open a new Validation Assistant window while another is still open. An error message will be displayed. In my example, you see that the failure is caused by a missing information in the table Analytical Determination. The number in brackets indicates the number of the row in which the error is located within that table. It means we have a failure in row number 2. In order to fill in the missing information, select a row and click Edit. Insert the missing information. In my example, I need to make a selection from the drop-down list for my analysis type. Click OK and save your corrections. Let's verify that we managed to correct the failure. For that, open the Validation Assistant and click Recheck. The Validation Assistant report gets updated. There is no remaining completeness check failures. You are ready to create your dossier. In order to create a dossier, right-click on your substance dataset and select Create Dossier. The information inserted during the dossier creation will be inserted in the dossier header. Select your submission type and click Next. Insert the dossier name and fill in the same information as previously when running the Validation Assistant. Joint submission status, information provided by the lead on behalf of the members, lead's own tonnage band, the phase-in status of the substance, and any other dossier-specific information. Click Finish. Now the dossier is created. Click Yes to view the dossier header that you just filled in. It is important to verify that also the final dossier is complete according to the validation assistant. Therefore, let's run the validation assistant on the final dossier before exporting it. In order to find your dossier, you can either search for it from the list of all your dossiers, or you can copy and paste the dossier unique user identifier called UUID to the search field in the upper right corner. Go to the search view, right-click on your dossier and select Validate. Should there be any failures reported, you will need to go back to the substance, correct the failures and create a new dossier. In my example, there are no failures. It is important to know that the completeness check performed by the agency may also include additional manual verification of certain elements in the dossier that cannot be automatically validated. Therefore, the completeness check outcome performed by the agency may be different than the one reported by the validation assistant. You can now export the dossier. Right-click on the dossier entry in the navigation panel. Select Export. Click Next. And select the location in your computer where you wish to save the file. Your dossier is now ready to be uploaded to ReachIT. The dossier submission via ReachIT will be covered in our Phase 6 webinar in November.
Thank you, Terhi and Margot. This concludes the practical advice on using Euclid. Now, my colleague Sandrine will present how you can create your member dossier in ReachIT. Sandrine, please.
Hello, my name is Sandrine and I work for the Directorate in charge of registration activities at the European Chemicals Agency. You've learned today with my colleagues how to prepare your registration dossier in Euclid. If you are a member of a joint submission, you might be interested to hear that an alternative to Euclid exists. It is the dossier creation directly in ReachIT. Creating a joint submission member dossier directly in ReachIT is simple and straightforward. We've seen earlier that to create a registration dossier in Euclid, you need to perform 5 different steps. Creating a joint submission member dossier directly in ReachIT can be made with only 2 steps. You first go to ReachIT and then you fill in the data directly. Before I present you more details about how to create your dossier directly in ReachIT, I would like to highlight that such a functionality can only be used if you are a member of a joint submission and if you have not yet successfully submitted a Euclid dossier for your substance. In addition, if you wish to report more than one composition in your member registration dossier, for example, if you have a manufacturing process that leads to substances with different impurities, or if you wish to opt out for some studies provided by the lead and provide your own studies, then creating your dossier with Euclid is the only available option. It's important to choose the right tool for your particular case. If you decide to create your dossier directly in ReachIT, ReachIT will remind you before you start of the exact conditions under which this tool can be used. So, what is a dossier creation in ReachIT? It's in fact a simplified manner to create a member registration dossier directly in ReachIT. The dossier creation in ReachIT is a step-by-step wizard that contains a lot of help and guidance. It's easy to use. The interface is intuitive and user-friendly, and you will discover it in a couple of minutes. Each step of the dossier creation wizard displays only a limited number of fields, and some information might even be pre-filled. For example, the main constituents in the dossier are pre-filled based on the identity of the substance, which has been indicated in the joint submission by the lead. I can also mention that if the lead has already submitted its dossier, you will be informed in the wizard if the lead has submitted the chemical safety report or the guidance on safe use on behalf of the members of the joint submission. You can see on the screen an example of such information. Even better, when you wish to update your dossier that was created with the ReachIT wizard, all the information you have already submitted will be pre-filled within the wizard. In each step of the wizard, you will also be informed about which fields has to be filled in. Any missing information will be automatically highlighted, and you will not be able to move to the next step if you have not provided all the required information. There is also an automatic saving. You can start filling in a dossier in ReachIT, pause, and continue later. The information you have already filled in will not be lost. The dossier creation in ReachIT was initially intended for small, medium enterprises, but every company can use it, and many companies are already doing so. So far, we've received positive feedback from industry. So why not creating your own member joint submission dossier directly in ReachIT? I have already highlighted some criteria to identify the most suitable tool to prepare your member registration dossier, choosing between IUCLID or going directly into ReachIT. Soon, I will show you how the dossier creation wizard looks like in ReachIT. But first, I'll tell you where you can access this new feature. You can start the dossier creation wizard from the Joint Submission Overview page in ReachIT. There is a button labeled Create and Submit Online. Simply click on it to start the creation of your member registration dossier. You can start your member registration dossier at any moment, but you will be able to submit it only after the lead has submitted the lead dossier. If you are not part yet of a joint submission in ReachIT, I invite you to participate to the REACH 2018 Phase 6 webinar on the 30th of November that will explain how to join a joint submission in ReachIT. Once you are in the dossier creation step-by-step wizard in ReachIT, you can start filling in your data. The dossier creation is user-friendly, intuitive. Similar to the validation assistant that was presented by my colleagues Margot, the dossier creation in ReachIT indicates which information should be provided in which field. So remember to prepare your data in advance. Dossier creation in ReachIT requires the same data as in a IUCLID dossier. As a member of a joint submission, you need to have at hand the substance identity, including your own concentration range and information on the impurity and any stabilizer contained in your substance. You need also to have the tonnage you have manufactured or imported during at least the last 3 years, the uses and conditions of uses of your substance through its life cycle, your own chemical safety report, unless it has already been agreed with the lead that the lead will submit it on behalf of all the members. You can also provide your own classification and labeling in case you have a good reasons to deviate from the one provided by the lead on behalf of all the members. If you consider some of this information to be confidential business information, you can indicate in your dossier that you do not want this information to be published. You will then need to also enter a comprehensive justification. Let's now move to a short demo so you can discover how the dossier creation in ReachIT looks like and how simple it is to use. I will first show you the different types of help features available in the dossier creation wizard, and then we will fill in the analytical information. This is the equivalent to the Euclid section 1.4 that you have discovered earlier today with Terry and Margot. So let's start with the various help features. To help you fill in the data in the dossier creation wizard in ReachIT, multiple types of help features are available. At the top of each screen, a metro map indicates in which step of the dossier creation wizard you are. Here, for example, we are in the step called Trade Name and Other Identifiers. By moving your mouse on top of the different circle, you can identify in which step you are, and you can see also what will be the next step. Just below, a short text in blue background provides information on the main purpose of the page. The colors are there to guide you as well. Blue is used, for example, to inform you. We can see here an example on the screens. In a later step, you will discover yourself that there are some places that informs you if the lead has submitted the chemical safety report or the guidance on safe use on behalf of the different members of the joint submission. The pink colors indicate the compulsory information that has to be provided. This color is equivalent to the validation assistant that was presented earlier today by my colleague Margot. The text in pink will disappear once you have provided the minimum compulsory information on the screen. Orange and burgundy colors are there to indicate the places where you can perform an action. For example, going back to a previous step here, going back to substance identifications, or here, by clicking on the plus button, which is in an orange background, you can see appearing a new block of information. So let's click on this plus button to see what's happening. A list of fields appears, and by clicking on the Show More, which is in burgundy color, you can discover additional fields. If you don't want to see all the fields and have only a limited number of information on your screen, just click on Show Less. Last but not least, a detailed page help is also available by clicking on the book icon, which is located here in the top right corner of the screen. This detailed page help is in fact an integrated user manual. There, you can find detailed instructions on what you can do on the screens and how to fill in the different fields. To close the page help, you just need to click again on the book icon. Now, let's fill in the requested information as indicated by the message in the pink background. In this case, we need to provide analytical informations. So, let's click on the plus icon to add analytical information. A new block appears. As you can see, the fields to be filled in are also indicated in pink. In this case, if we read the instructions in pink and also in the page help, we need to provide indications and quantification analysis. So let's do so in the purpose of analysis. We need also to provide the analysis type. So let's say that we have HPLC analysis results. So I can type and then I can select. And we need also to attach the methods and the results of our analysis. Let's do so. As you can see, once the requested information has been specified, the pink color disappears and you can save the data you have provided. In case you wish to add more analytical information, you can create additional blocks by clicking again on the plus icon. If you want to edit the information you have already provided, just click on the pen icon here. Once all the compulsory information have been filled in on the screen, then, as I said, all the pink message will disappear and you will be able to continue to the next step and move here to the substance composition. Of course, if you wish, you can decide to quit the dossier creation wizard at that stage and then come back later. This is now concluding the short demo. Let's move to the conclusions. I hope that you are now convinced that the dossier creation directly in ReachIT is easy to use and can be a simple alternative to Euclid. Do not forget to read the help and the guides available in the step-by-step wizard. Remember also to prepare and gather your data in advance. One last advice: if you are a member of a joint submission, try the dossier creation directly in ReachIT.
Thank you, Sandrine. So, we hope you found these practical examples helpful and that you now have a good foundation to start working with Euclid, or for preparing your dossier directly in ReachIT. Now, before we move to the Q&A session, I want to share some tips with you for using Euclid. Firstly, and this is one of the key improvements in Euclid, we have added a wealth of support material directly into Euclid. You can access this information at any time by pressing the F1 key on your keyboard. The table of contents of the substance dataset can be customized to suit your particular need. Select the view for your tonnage and your role in the joint submission. Now, whatever you do, use the validation assistant to check your dataset and your dossier. It can help you avoid additional work in case your submission is rejected by ECHA. By right-clicking, you can access the menu options in Euclid. This enables you to create new substance datasets or export a dossier. Euclid has many templates and inventories. Use them to avoid entering the same information twice. As you may have noticed during the practical examples, some free text fields are accompanied by text templates that help you fill out the required information. Remember also that we have a dedicated Euclid help desk which you can contact at any time should you experience any technical issues. Now it's time to move to our Q&A session. Welcome to the Q&A session. First, let's have a brief introduction of our expert panel. I'm joined here by François Le Goff, Mark Roberts, and Zolt Gabor from ECHA. Thank you for joining us. The first question is about the installation of Euclid 6. What are the differences between the desktop and server versions, the installer and the updater, which can all be found on the Euclid 6 website? And which one should one choose if they were installing Euclid?
Thanks, Adam. I can take this one. Depending on how you intend to use Euclid 6, different options are available. We can make the distinction between two types of installation files. If you are going to use Euclid on your own and you want to install in your own computer, then select Euclid 6 desktop version. In case you intend to work in collaborative environment with multiple users accessing the same data, you will probably need the server version. Although the desktop version can be easily installed, installing the server version will require IT support from a system administrator. The difference between the installer and the updater is quite straightforward. If you don't have Euclid 6 installed, use the installer. In case you already have Euclid 6 and would like to upgrade to the latest version, then use the updater.
I would also like to add there, Adam, that as we saw earlier in the webinar, and particularly in the presentation given by Sandrine, the first question to ask is, do I need Euclid 6? We are now offering a way for members of a joint submission to prepare that registration dossier directly in ReachIT. So first, please carefully explore the option and its limitations to decide whether or not you'll have to install Euclid 6. In case you would need to install Euclid 6, you can go to the Euclid 6 website, create a user account, and download the version that best suits your needs.
Okay, thank you both. So this new functionality in ReachIT for preparing the member dossier has raised quite a lot of interest. People are asking what happens after a dossier has already been prepared and submitted directly using ReachIT. can the dossier information still be retrieved within ReachIT?
I can take this one too, Adam. First, I must say that I am happy to hear that the dossier creation feature in ReachIT is raising interest. This might indeed be a simple and pragmatic solution for some members of the joint submission. To answer the question directly, first I'd like to state the obvious and remind you that once a dossier has been prepared in ReachIT and all the request information has been filled in, you will then need to confirm the submission of your dossier. Do not worry about that. The preparation of your dossier in ReachIT and its submission will happen seamlessly. You will be guided from the first step of your dossier creation until the submission confirmation page. After having confirmed your submission in ReachIT, you will receive a preliminary submission number in your ReachIT message inbox. This follows the same process as for all dossiers submitted via ReachIT. With this submission number, you can follow the progress of your dossier in ReachIT, and you will also be informed about necessary actions and outcomes related to this submission. For example, if you have to pay an invoice. Once you have successfully completed and submitted your dossier, you will also receive a registration number in ReachIT. So to simplify this, I can say that for ReachIT there is no difference between a dossier created in ReachIT and a dossier created with Euclid. This means that you will retrieve all the usual information on the submissional status of your dossier in ReachIT. I'd also like to remind you that you can start the creation of a member registration dossier in ReachIT at any moment after the joint submission has been created by the lead, but ReachIT will only allow you to submit it after the lead has submitted the lead dossier.
Okay, great. Thanks for the explanation. This actually quite nicely leads me to another question. Can you also update your registration dossier using ReachIT?
Maybe I can answer this one, Adam. As mentioned in Sandrine's presentation, for the registration dossier, only member dossiers that have been initially prepared in ReachIT can be updated directly in ReachIT. So this means that if you have already submitted a member dossier created with Euclid, you will not be able to update it using the dossier preparation feature in ReachIT. You can, however, prepare an initial member dossier in ReachIT and then update it with a dossier created in Euclid. This is possible, but then all subsequent updates will have to be made with Euclid. Remember that you can also submit an update of your registration dossier only after the previous submission has been finalized. ReachIT will remind you before you start updating your dossier of the exact conditions under which this online functionality can be used.
Okay, thanks for the comprehensive answer. Moving to the next question. Is there a way to exchange different parts of a Euclid dataset, for example, between members of a joint submission or with experts who are only preparing specific parts of the dataset?
Thanks, Adam. I will answer this one. As shown in Francois' presentation earlier, Euclid offers the possibility to exchange data. This is done using the import and export functionalities. There is a possibility to export the dataset and share the generated I6Z file with other Euclid users. The recipient of the file can then import the dataset in his own Euclid installation and continue to work on the content. You can export the full dataset, or by using the advanced options of the export assistant, you can also select a subset of the information and decide to share only specific types of information, such as the physical-chemical properties or the use information. If you receive an export file with new information from your colleague, you can then re-import the dataset in the selected and select the import options that are corresponding to your needs. The default option is to overwrite only the most recently modified information, but you can also choose to import only the new records added to the dataset and not to overwrite any existing information.
Maybe I can add on this that there is another option that is now available with the recent service release of Euclid 6 published last week. And this option will allow you to replace a full dataset during import. So this new replace option combines two operations in one. It works as if you would first delete your existing dataset and then import it again to your database.
Okay, thank you both. Moving on to the support that is available for Euclid, we've received quite a few questions about step-by-step instructions on preparing your registration dossier in Euclid. Maybe Mark, this one is for you.
Yes, I can answer this. With Euclid 6, all the support available is provided directly inside the application itself in the embedded help system. While working in Euclid, if you press the F1 key on your keyboard, the help system will be displayed. Inside the help system, you will find different levels of information. First, a general description of the Euclid functions, such as dossier creation or the export function. You will also find specific support on how to fill in different fields. So if you are filling in the information in a field, such as the results of the water solubility property, and you press F1, the help system will display specific instructions for reporting information in this field. On the step-by-step instructions for preparing a registration dossier, I would just like to mention that the manual on how to prepare a registration dossier has been revised and is also easily accessible from within the application itself. In this manual you will find precise instructions that will guide you through the process of reporting the necessary registration data for your substance. The manual is also available as a PDF document on the ECHA website under support /manuals in case you would like to prefer to print your own copy.
Okay, thank you, Mark. The next question is about updating previous registration information sent to ECHA in the Euclid format. How does this work in practice? Does the user have to re-enter all the information in their substance data set and the dossier?
Maybe I can answer this one, Adam. The registration information is managed in Euclid for each substance in separate datasets. So we have seen during this webinar that before submitting the information to ECHA, a dossier has to be created. This dossier is a read-only snapshot of the information available on your substance. So after the initial submission, in case there is a need to resubmit additional information due to a completeness check failure or a specific request from ECHA, or simply when you have new data available, you can go back to Euclid and continue to work on your substance dataset. You can easily modify the data or add more information. Once done, you have to create a new dossier and then submit it to ECHA via ReachIT. In the dossier update creation process, you will be asked to indicate the submission number you received after your latest submission for this substance to ECHA, and this will allow us to make the link between your previous submission and the new update you are sending.
Okay, thank you, François. Moving on, could you explain the difference between an endpoint study record or records and endpoint study summaries?
I can take this one, Adam. An endpoint study record summarizes the content of one study performed on a chemical. The information needs to be provided for each substance property as specified in the REACH annexes. So in some cases, more than one study may be available to measure a substance property. This leads to the creation of several endpoint study records, one for summarizing each available study record. So information on the substance properties is used then to assess the hazards linked to the substance. In order to support this assessment, it is useful to separately report the key values used for the assessment. So for this, Euclid proposes to use endpoint summaries, which are there to fill in the summary of each substance property.
Maybe I can just continue and give more information about these endpoint summaries. They are useful to clarify the outcome of the hazard assessment, as Mark said, and they are incorporated automatically in the chemical safety report generated by Euclid. So in case you have to perform a chemical safety assessment, you can also use the CASER tool because this tool will be able to read the key values to be used for the assessment from the Euclid endpoint summaries. And it's avoiding to have to retype the same information several times.
Okay, thank you very much. We're moving now to a question about the validation assistant, which was mentioned in the webinar earlier. What are the different types of checks done by the validation assistant? And what will happen if someone doesn't correct them before submitting the dossier to ECHA?
I can take that one, Adam. The validation assistant helps users in the preparation of Euclid 6 dossiers so that they can be successfully submitted and processed by ECHA. The validation assistant report consists of two tabs, the submission checks tab and the quality checks tab. So first of all, the submission checks tab. This opens by default when you run the validation assistant. In this tab, the validation assistant reports failures from the business rules check and the technical completeness check. If you do not correct these failures before uploading the dossier in ReachIT, the dossier will be rejected by the system. So in the second tab, as I mentioned earlier, the quality checks tab, this is reporting the results of quality validations that support users in providing consistent reporting of information. So if left uncorrected, the dossier can be successfully submitted to ECHA, but depending on their severity, they may trigger follow-up actions later on if the dossier is looked at in evaluation.
Thank you, Mark. Why do you say that the validation assistant has to be run both on the dataset and the dossier? Can't you just run it on one of them?
Maybe I can take this question. As said earlier, substance datasets are editable objects, while dossiers cannot be edited. So it's as if you would have a Word document in which you can change the text, and once you are satisfied with the text, you create a PDF of it, where the text is now frozen. As Margot showed in her presentation earlier in this webinar, you can run the validation assistant interactively on the substance dataset. You can navigate to the Euclid section where the validation assistant reports a failure, correct it in the substance dataset, save, and just refresh the validation assistant report to see if you have corrected the failure correctly. This is a quite convenient way to fix the failures reported by the validation assistant. Once you create the dossier, you can no longer correct this information in the dossier. So if you get a validation assistant failure at that stage, you need to go back to the substance dataset, correct the failure there, and then recreate the dossier. Therefore, it is useful to correct the failures already in the dataset, as you can correct them on the fly. So why would you still validate the dossier if you have corrected all the failures of the substance dataset? This is because when you create the dossier, you add some further information by selecting the dossier template and because you're filling some additional information in the dossier header. The dossier header contains important information about what kind of registration you have, and it still can influence the outcome of the validation. Therefore, even if validating your substance dataset did not give any failures by the validation assistant, it's very important that you validate also the final dossier. And you do that before you upload it to ReachIT.
Okay, thank you very much. That concludes the Q&A session. Thank you very much to our panelists once more and for you for joining us. We have reached the end of the webinar. Thank you for joining us and to our panelists and presenters. Now, if you did not receive an answer to your question by the time the webinar ends, please resubmit it to your National Help Desk or to our ECHA Help Desk. Remember that you will be able to find a recording of the webinar and further support material on the Reach 2018 web pages. The next webinar in the 2018 series, Submit Your Registration Dossier, takes place on the 30th of November. So, your Euclid dossier is ready. What now? The webinar will show you how easy it is to navigate around ReachIT and submit your dossier. We'll also explain and guide you through some of the most important new features of ReachIT, such as identifying the tasks assigned to you and how you can act on them using the joint submission page. We will also show you how to manage and change your company information. You can already register for this webinar on our website. If you haven't already done so, remember to subscribe to our news from the ECHA homepage and follow us on our social media channels. See you again in November.